Okay, let's get started. Hello there. Welcome to our presentation about TAPS, or the Turnaround Progressing System. My name's Ian Nicholson. I'm VP Solutions at Emerald. I've got many years international experience. I work in risk analysis and I work in turnarounds. Joining me today and doing all the hard work is Mary Lynn Backstrom, who's got many years experience as well and does a lot of work in the turnaround space. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges that people face in the shutdowns and turnarounds world. So the first thing is that when your plant is down, you're obviously not getting any revenue, um, and the amount of money that you're spending can be $100,000 per hour or more. And so there's a lot of management visibility as to what's going on in your shutdown or turnaround, for obvious reasons. On top of that, we have aging plants. They require more repairs. They have to go through technical upgrades. There's often CapEx tie-ins that are involved as part of the turnaround. Um, and our shutdown turnaround cycles are getting longer. People don't want the plants to be shut down, particularly if you're in oil and gas and the price of oil is $100 a barrel. You obviously don't want to have your plant down any more than you have to. So what happens is people tend to extend out the cycles for their shutdowns and turnarounds. Now, this means that when you actually do a turnaround, it's going to be larger. You're going to have less time to do it, and you're going to be finding it harder to get the resources for a number of reasons. Um, you know, because everyone wants to do their shutdowns in the same time of the year, which could be the spring or fall, or it could be the summer, depending on where you are in the world. It means that you're competing for resources with other people who are doing the same kind of work. It's not unusual for our customers to have 80,000 tasks in their schedule, 1.2 million man hours, and they're doing all of that in 35 days. So things are very compressed and very stressful. So we introduced TAPS probably about 15 years ago now, as a way to get fast, accurate updates into Primavera. And we work with our clients on turnarounds. And back then, people would be manually typing information into P6 to do their updates, and the whole scheduling team would come in at 4 o'clock in the morning in order to get the schedule updated for a 7 o'clock distribution. And it was very stressful time. People were manually typing things in. They might have hundreds or thousands of activities they had to update, and they're scrolling up and down in P6, turning filters on and off, trying to find the activities they need to update. And it's very easy to make a mistake in that kind of environment. The other thing that we find is that people need earned value reports, and P6 actually isn't very good at earned value, surprisingly, at least out of the box. It has the capacity to add all of that in, but they made some assumptions early on in development of the tool. For example, it only does earned value calculations at the activity level, but in a shutdown and turnaround, we really want to manage at the resource level. So we need to know how many hours we earned for each resource that's on our turnaround. And so it became a real challenge for people. How do I do that? And TAPS lets you do that because it actually does the calculations you need in the background to do earned value right down to the resource assignment level. We've also have a challenge around canceled work. So you open something up, the inspectors go inside and they find out there's much less work than you expected. So in P6, we then have to go find the activities that represent that work. We would have to um, mark the activity as canceled, zero it out, or delete it, and essentially it became quite a chore to do that. And we typically don't recommend that you delete activities because it screws up your baseline calculations. I remember having a meeting years ago with Shell, and they figured it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to cancel one activity in their turnaround schedule. So the ability to be able to cancel work very quickly and easily was a real requirement that TAPS takes care of. Now, I mentioned that it's a very stressful time when you're working on your turnaround and you're trying to get your reports out in the morning so everyone knows what they need to work on. Um, you could just feel the tension in the room go up when if a printer jammed or if somebody's report hadn't come in. And what we really want to do is we want to get our schedulers away from doing data entry and get them into spending more time analyzing the schedule. Now, this is critically important because if all they're trying to do is get that report out the door, they're not spending the time that they should spend to figure out exactly what's going on and why we suddenly have negative float in our schedule, or why our resource loading doesn't make any sense, or any of those kind of things. They need time to be able to do that, and TAPS, because of its speed, buys them that time. So there's a number of benefits to using TAPS. Your updates are faster, they're more accurate, you get earned value. All of these things come along with TAPS. So how does it work? So first of all, we have two versions of TAPS. We have TAPS, the classic TAPS, which uses barcodes and scanners, but we also have TAPS Mobile, which moves everything to mobile devices, either tablets or phones. So depending on what your team wants to use, all the features of tabs are contained within both. So you have the ability to even mix and match. If some of your um, coordinators are very computer adverse, maybe they're the older guys who really don't want to know, you can give them the paper. But for the younger guys who want to use tablets or want to use phones to do updating, you can give them that as well. So that you have the ability to mix and match between them. Let's talk a little bit about how the technology works. So the first thing is that TAPS um, can be on premise, it can be in the cloud. And as I mentioned before, you can have the classic paper and scanner version of TAPS, or you can use the mobile version of TAPS. So all of these options are available. So we've made the tool so that it doesn't matter whether your P6 is in the cloud or your P6 is on premise or it's located somewhere else, whatever it happens to be, TAPS can work with it. So the classic TAP starts off with you generate the work reports that you've always created. And the only thing that's different is that we put a barcode on each line item in the schedule that goes out. Now the barcode doesn't do anything for the guy in the field. What the barcode does though is it allows you when the report comes back in to very quickly enter the progress that the field has reported. Um, In fact, what we can do is we create a percentage report, and these percentages can be any number you want. So on the left is a very detailed one where we put every percentage from 5 to 95%. Or it can be, or you can come up with your own rules. You can say, you know what, I only want to report 10, 25, 50, 75, or 99%. So these are all options that you can do. You can put any percentage you want in the barcode. If you're using TAPS Mobile, you can define any percentages that you want to use. So again, when a user goes to his or her activity and they pull it up on the mobile device, it will only give them the options that you've defined as the percentages that can be entered. Um, we can also mark something as being completed. So you can, you know, in P6 to mark something completed, you need to say it started, entered when it was started. You need to say it was finished, enter when it was finished. It's a lot of clicks and a lot of data entry. With TAPS, you just hit the barcode to say complete, and TAPS takes care of everything. It marks when it started, it marks it as 100% complete, it marks it as completed, puts in the finish date, does everything for you. So one scan can remove, 5 or 6 data entry points that you would have to do in P6. Now, once you've got everything prepared, the progress comes in from the field. If you're using the TAPS mobile app, then the guys in the field can just directly enter their progress. And that can be done by a foreman, it can be done by a coordinator, it can be done by anybody you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be done by any particular person. Um, but when the reports are ready and the progress is done, let's talk about the classic version of TAPS. The paper comes into the office. Somebody takes a barcode scanner. They scan the barcode that's on that field report, and then they scan the percent complete. So it's two scans and I can completely update the progress. I don't have to worry about finding the activity in P6, marking it as started, marking it as when it started, marking it as completed, marking when it completed. I just have to do two scans with a barcode scanner. Again, if I'm using Taps Mobile, then what I would do is I would simply pull that activity up because I get the same list on my mobile device that I would get on the paper. I pull it up. I say, okay, yep, here it is. We're pulling the bundle. It's done. I mark it as being completed, and I'm done. So again, very quick, very easy. And the idea here is to make it so that we're not taking expensive resources and having them do data entry and basically feeding P6 the information it needs. We can do it very quickly and very easily. Um, Once everything's been scanned in, we can review it, make sure it makes sense, and then we can submit it into P6. Now we use Primavera's APIs or web services. So depending on how your system is set up, we can work with you to decide which one's going to work better. There isn't a difference in functionality, um, but the idea here is we can review this really quickly, and if the scheduler doesn't like something, then they can change it. We also have some options here. We can tell the system to update the milestones that are linked to our activities. So if we have a finish milestone and all of its predecessors are done, TAPS will mark it as being completed. If we have a start milestone and its successors are done, TAPS will mark it as completed. We can also run an out of sequence report. So instead of having to dig into Primavera and go in and look at the schedule report and find out what's out of sequence, we can do it automatically. The system will just pop up a report and say, hey, you updated these activities. These other activities should probably be updated as well. So it just flags to make sure that we get everything properly recorded so we earn all the hours that we should. We also have the ability to dissolve canceled activities. So if we cancel an activity, what P6 does is it zeroes that activity out and removes all the resource hours so we don't earn any hours for that activity. And it sets some codes to or user defined fields to flag that that was a canceled activity. And on top of that, we can also tell it to dissolve the logic around that activity. Once all that's done, the progress comes into P6. We can reschedule, we can run our reports however we want to distribute them out to the field, and we're good to go. Now, I mentioned before that one of the things that people often want to do is they want their schedules to spend more time doing analysis. So if your schedulers are not busy doing data entry, they can do things like populate dashboards that let managers know what's going on. So there's some examples of some dashboards that we can prepare, like an inspection summary dashboard or an exchanger progress um, dashboard or control valves. So we can do what we call green up reports, which turn from being red to yellow to green as they get progressed. So again, you can take those relatively expensive resources, which are your schedulers, and get them doing more productive things to help manage the turnaround as opposed to just doing data entry. So let's take a look. I'm going to turn it over to Mary Lynn, and she's going to do all the heavy lifting, and then at the end, I'm going to come back and just wrap things up. Okay, Mary Lynn, you should have control.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here and we'll get started. Okay, the first thing that I wanted to just have a quick look at is we have just a small sample of a schedule in here. Well, if I scroll up to the top here, you can see we don't have any progress in the schedule. So it's just a little example that we'll use. Now, as Ian was saying, if you have to do updates manually in P6, and I'm speaking as somebody who's sat in that chair many times and had to do them, you will find that TAPS is going to make things a lot faster for you. It's going to prevent what I always refer to at 4 in the morning when you're on day 20 or so of the turnaround, feeling like you've got corners on your eyeballs a little bit looking up these different items. So of course, if we were going to just update an activity, now if I'm looking at a large number of activities, even if I have a layout that is very similar to the field reports, you may need to go and find it in P6. So you're clicking on columns, you're doing control find, all those sorts of things to find it. It can get very tedious when you have to do a few hundred of them. Plus, if I go in, for example, and update install scaffolding, and I say, okay, that one is started and that one is finished. Now, if I had to do anything with resources or anything else, but even just 2 clicks and you have to go keep on going down, it gets very labor intensive. So let's have a look at how we can put these updates in a little bit easier. So what I want to do is just go over to taps. Now, first of all, let's have a look at what Ian referred to as classic taps. Now that's using the barcodes. So you've got a login screen and I'll just go ahead and log in. Now once you log in, one of the first things you want to have a look at, of course, is your update time. Well, when am I updating this to? Just so that you know where I'm going with this, if I go back to P6 for a minute, you'll see our schedule is starting the 11th of April. So if I'm going in and I'm saying, okay, I'm doing my update for my first shift, etc., you can see where this coincides. You're setting your data date is basically what you're doing. So if I go in and I realize I'm going backwards in dates a little bit, you wouldn't be doing this in the field, but just to show you how it works with the file. So if I say I'm updating at 11, sorry, April 11th, not at 11, and if I'm looking for 1900, I just need to go down here. Uh, I'm used to military clocks, you can tell. So we're talking 7 p.m., sorry. So okay, if we go and I just need to set this to 7 and I want PM, so we should be good. Yeah, there we go, 7 PM. So I've set my data date. Now we've got some default settings in here. So by default, TAPS is going to update connected milestones for you, which I find is awesome because that's one less check I need to do after I'm done my updates. Because any of you have been involved in turnarounds, I'm sure you're quite used to running those filters at the end of your update to make sure that the status of your milestones, which of course get pulled to your milestone reports, agrees with everything that's been statused in the schedule. This way, if something that's connected is status, the milestone's looked after for you. Now, run out a sequence report that by default is on. Again, very good item to have pop up on your screen so you know you've got out of sequence activities and you have the opportunity to fix them because you can send more than one submission to P6 under the same data date when you need to. And we have dissolve canceled activities logic. Well, I'll deal with this one in just a few minutes because that one we will have a look at actually through mobile, just as something different to log into here. Now, if we're updating activities, we've got our first update and we're just getting started, getting everything underway, so we don't have a lot of things happening. But if I've got, for example, my first activity, SD 120. Now, this particular one is coming in from the field. They're telling me it's 75%. So I scan the activity and I scan 75%. That's all I have to do. I'm on to the next activity. Now, not that you necessarily have to use scanning steps and scanning resources in TAPS, but it is available. So I've got another activity on the update, and this particular one we are going to status it using the steps. So if I go through, this one actually has 4 steps, and they're telling me the whole thing is complete. Well, I can actually go in, and you'll see that it will actually complete the steps for me. So I can just scan them. Again, each update is just 2 quick scans, and you're finished. So it does allow you to scan steps and resources. We'll look at resources just shortly, but that particular one was set up to walk through the steps. So if that's the 2 activities, and I realize usually you'll have more than that, but like I say, we're just getting things going here. If I want to send it to P6, all I have to do is click save. Now, if you've scanned information in and something is wrong, you don't want to send it, that's what that clear scans is for. Now, you also have a scan available for remove. So if you're scanning a list of activities and you get the last one you scanned wrong, you can remove it. Not suggesting that the barcode won't find the activity, it will, but maybe you've scanned one that you didn't mean to scan, you want to go on to the next. You can definitely remove, again, just with a simple scan. So I'm just going to click save. Now, I do have out of sequence activities. So at this point, I've even got not just the out of sequence report like you get when you're scheduling in P6, but I've actually got the barcodes there available to me. So it makes it very easy to go in and say, okay, I have something going on here because I need status on these activities. And you can take the steps to fix that before you're actually issuing reports which are missing update information that could have been easily fixed. So right now, what I'm going to do is just go back to P6. And of course, to see what was sent over, I need to refresh. Now, when I look at what was sent over here, you can see I've got SD 110, I've got SD 120, which are a little over halfway down my screen here. Now, if I look at SD 110, that is the one we completed. Now, if I go into the steps part, you can see it has updated the steps. Now, for anybody who is on the webinar and you've had to deal with updating steps manually in P6, very tedious. So they do serve a very good purpose, but it can get very, very labor intensive to have to go through and start manually updating steps inside P6. Now, even if you're not using the steps, of course, our next activity here, SD 120 started, are 75% complete. So 2 updates very, very easily taken care of. So at this point, I can actually go in and I could reschedule my project. So remember when we were looking at our updates here, we've sent everything over. It was that fast. Our updates are all done. You can just schedule it. So if I wanted to go in and schedule this, I could set it to 1900. Select it, and I can reschedule it. And at that point, you're ready to do your analysis, figure out what else you need to do, that kind of scenario. Now, of course, normally you would be looking at fixing your out of sequence as well. Now, what happens if I want to go in and do a second update? Well, all I have to do is go back into Taps. Now, I'm still logged in here. I can click back, or I could log out and back in again. It's going to let me do it either way. So if I'm looking at my data date here and I want to set it, for example, to the 12th at 7 a.m., I can do that. And I can go in and I can scan what I need for updates. Now, when you're updating activities in P6, you've got duration percent, units percent, um, and physical percent. So of course, you do have occasions where you're going to see that in your schedules. Well, TAPS is going to send all of that information over for you because it will update any type of activity. So if I go in and do the next update that I have here, which is a little more activities, and that's fine. So the first activity I have here, and this one is complete. Got another activity here, and next one is 25%. Another one, which is 25%. And I doubt you can hear my scanner because it doesn't tend to be really very noisy, but it's just 2 scans for each one. And I'm going down the list, able to put all the updates in. Now, this next one I have, they're telling me that it is 99%. Well, we have that as a scan available as well. Now, usually that's used for an activity that is they feel it's gonna be finished by the end of the shift and not 100% sure. They want the next shift to check it, and at that point, it would be turned to 100%. So you have that availability as well. Now, when I go on to the next activity, I did say that we were gonna be dealing with resource scanning as well. Well, I have the next activity here. This one, we're gonna update using updating the resources. So if I go in and scan the resource, I can actually complete or status the resources. In this case, they're telling me this one is complete, but you can use the resources as you can see there as well. Now I've just got 4 more, sorry. So this particular one is already 100%, and you can see because I scanned it and it's already 100%, it's going to tell you that. So I do have 3 more here. This one needs to go to completed. Now the next activity I have is physical percent complete. So what I need to do is 75% and I need to scan remaining duration. So you can do that as well. And you can see it's not time consuming, it's very easy to do. The next activity I've got is units percent complete, and this is 50%. So once I've got that particular update in, again, like we did before, I can go through the same steps and send it over to P6. So I'm just going to say save it. Now, I do have a number of out of sequence activities, and I expected that. It's the way we've done this particular update. So normally I would have some cleaning up to do here. Now, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to log out of here simply because the next update will do through mobile. But before we go there, I'll go back to P6. Now, if I hit F5 again, and you can see we've got a number of additional updates that are showing up in there. So if I go down the list and you can see we only had a couple updated, if we go down the list, we've got quite a number more that we've got progress on right now. So it's a very easy, very quick way to get your updates into your schedule. And as Ian mentioned, that gives you a lot of extra time to be able to do your analysis. And that's where your big return on investment is going to come from. Now, we can schedule and go through and analyze this. There is another piece I want to show you as well, though. We did talk about there is TAPS Classic or the barcode TAPS, the one that deals with putting updates in using barcodes. Now, we also have Taps Mobile. So let's go and have a look at what that particular one looks like. So it's actually the same login I'm using, but I've got a few tools here so that you can see what it would look like on a mobile device, i.e., this one is a phone. So I'm just going to hit refresh because sometimes idling this a little bit will um, have it time out on me. So what I want to do here, you log in the same way you would for the desktop piece. So I'm just going to go and log in. Now, this is the scenario you would see on your phone. It's what you're setting here for options is no different than what you're setting on the classic taps. You want to give it an update date. In other words, your data date in your schedule. So if I'm looking at, and you'll see it's just defaulting to my system date, which is fine, but that's not what I want for my update. So if my next update was going to be the 12th at 8 a.m., for example, you can set it to whatever you need it to be reflecting. Whoops, I want 0. And now you'll see that I've got a filter on my activities. I've also, and I just need to move this sharing bar here, I've got a save here. So I can click to save that, and it's telling me nothing to save. So just bear with me 1 second here. I am just going to refresh this. Okay, this one is already there. That's good. So we can also set, if we go in, we can set filters. So what project do you want to update? So if you are responsible for updating a large number of activities off of 2 or 3 different schedules, you don't have to go scrolling through all of them. You can set up a number of filters here. Now, what you can do with this is I can set up a project, I can set up a filter, but I also have an and here. So you've got a number of different things you can actually filter by. I can filter by the project itself, which is what I did. Now, you can also filter by project code, by activity code, and by date. So you can filter so that you get activities within the next 24 hours, that type of scenario. So I've just put project and then I'm sorting by activity ID. Again, if you want other elements, there is other options under there as well. So just to keep this particular one fairly simple, that's what I've got set up. Just pick the project, sort it by activity ID, and as you saw in our little example, there's not a large amount of activities in that particular file, but you definitely have the functionality to be able to control larger files so that you're not scrolling and scrolling and scrolling for a long time. So I'm going to say apply. Now, this gives me the activities. Now, another thing I want you to be aware of, and if I click the little icon at the left on the top, this is in the settings. That's where it took us to begin with, where we set the data date. But there is some other settings I want you to be aware of before we go back in and do some updates. So if I go into settings, this is where I set the time. So if you click out of that first box, you'll notice that it does close fairly quickly, but you can also always go to the symbol in the top left, click on it. It will give you access to confirm what your settings are set at. So I've got update milestones, run out of sequence report, same defaults that we had on the desktop. Now this time I want to include dissolve canceled activity logic. Now, the other piece that I want you to be aware of, Ian did mention that you can configure your percentage types. You definitely can. So I've got 25, 50, 75, 99, and 100. But what if for some reason I needed, for example, 65%, which is kind of an odd one. But if you need to add another percentage, click in there And if I wanted 65, I just type 65. You'll see I get an add 65 at the bottom. It is that easy. Now I get that as an option when I go to update the activities. So set your options and click save. And now if I whoops, just bear with me one second here. Now if I go and click to activities, here's my activities. So if we want to go in and you can see it is reading from P6 because the activities that we progressed are showing up, the progress is showing up in this particular scenario. So it's not that it's caching it somewhere to apply it later. Those updates that we put in are in there. Now, if I go in and I want to update something in here and tell P6 that it's, for example, canceled. If I'm just gonna pick an activity, which this one normally wouldn't be one you canceled, but if I want to go in and say, Remove and repair safety glass is canceled." I can do that very, very, very easily. And all I have to do is click this drop down, and you can see I've got cancel right at the bottom. So that's all I need to do. Now, if I want to see what that does to the activity, I can click to open the activity. So you can see it's gone through and canceled it. I don't have to enter any other information. Now, if I wanted to do an update to an activity in here or a number of activities, it is very easy to do as well. So you can just go in, and if you just want to put the update in from the roll up line, you can do that. So I could hit the drop down and I can put whatever percentage in here. If this particular activity is now 75%, I could put that in there. But if I needed to go and change something down here because of the duration type, because of anything else like that, you can go and update the information that you need to because you got duration physical units. You can go in and change things around or review what's in the activity at the bottom. So I've got a couple of updates in here. If I want to send those back so that we can have a look at what that looks like in P6, all I do is click save. Again, I've got the out of sequence, so I can go back in and do something about those activities if that's what I want to do before I look at the schedule, which is normally what you would be doing. So if I go back into P6 at that point, it's been sent. So all I have to do, and my apologies, my laptop has done this a few times. I'll get the descriptions back here. I just want to refresh. And if I scroll down here a little bit, here is one activity that we were dealing with. And of course, my laptop's going to have a little bit of attitude today. It must know it's the 13th. So if I look at 020, open and remove manways, this is the one I started 75% complete. So it's came through off of our mobile device. Now, the one I canceled. Now, the cancel one works in either TAPS scenario, whether you're using barcodes or you're using mobile device. But this is something that I find working turnaround schedules is extremely handy as well, because when you cancel activities, it can be very, very tedious to go through and do that. Now, you can see it goes a step further because it actually puts canceled in front of the activity name, which makes it very easy to filter on them, although there's other ways of filtering on them as well. But you've got that very visible indicator it has been canceled. So if I go in and I look at what happens when I cancel it, I just have another layout that's going to show you some of the fields a little bit easier here. So if I look at, I've just filtered um, sorry, not filtered. I've just set up columns in a layout so that you get the canceled columns. They're very, very easy to see here. So just to give you an idea of what this does, this canceled activity. So I've got some information here about what happened to the activity, when was it canceled, along with predecessors and successors, because don't forget, I said to dissolve the logic. The logic gets dissolved, but the information is still available as to what it was. Now, also, you'll notice down in the resource tab here, canceled budgeted units, canceled original duration, that information is still available as well. Now, we did talk about earned value. So there is one more layout, and I apologize. I realize time is marching on here. But what I wanted to have a look at here, I do have a layout that is earned value. So what I wanted you to be aware of here is we have the earned value information. And Ian did mention that it does track TAPS earned labor units, TAPS earned cost, TAPS non-labor information. So you've got earned value information down to the resource level. Now, this information is also available in the resource assignments tab. So you can go into the resource assignments tab, create a layout, and you can roll these up as you need to. So it's all very, very, very easy to pull that information. So if I go in, and you can save layouts in here. So if I go in and I look at earned value, TAPS earned labor cost, TAPS earned labor units, and I've got it for the resources. So you can see by activity and by resources. So you've got all that information available to you. And all just with a few scans. Very, very easy to use. For somebody scanning information into P6, they don't really have to know scheduling at all. They need to know how to log into TAPS, how to scan it in. At that point, if you want, they can be turning it over to a scheduler to have a look at it, to send it over, or they can send it over and then turn it over to the scheduler, whichever way you want to look at it. Now, there is one more element that I just wanted to touch on here before I hand it back to Ian. Now, there is also, this is what TAPS will give you. Very easy updates. It does calculate earned value down to the resource. It will cancel activities at a scan of a barcode, all of that good information. Now, once you've got that information into your schedules, there's another piece, just some food for thought. P6 Reporter is another tool that Emerald has. Now, P6 Reporter, and I'm just going to go in and just show you a couple of the reports that are available in P6 Reporter in regards to like connected directly to TAPS. So we talked about earned value. Well, you can have the information in your in your schedule that you're using TAPS to update your turnaround schedule, and you can snapshot into EP data warehouse and maintain a progression of progress through your turnaround. Now, it's food for thought because I've worked a number of turnarounds where this is something that is very valuable. I've worked turnarounds where they didn't have this going because, of course, some of these reporter tools have not been out all that long. But just so you know, we've got a couple more tools. EP Data Warehouse, you can store snapshots once your updates are done in your turnaround schedule. And you can see things like earned value versus time, earned value by resource in a few different scenarios. And you can also set it up so that I can see canceled hours by activity, canceled hours by resource. Now, this one is one that I am personally fairly fond of because I've had to do this type of reporting straight out of P6. This is so much easier. It's connected right to the snapshot. You create a snapshot once your updates are done. This report is going to update appropriately. So there's not a lot of fussing around with exports or anything like that to get this particular graph going. Now, also available in P6 Reporter, and something that I've done many times in turnarounds, you've got comparison to previous update. So a lot of times you're looking for, okay, where were we sitting at the morning shift updates? Where are we sitting night shift updates? What happened on this last shift? So you can have that type of information in a column format, or you can have it graphically as well. So you can have automated comparisons. Just some food for thought on some things that could well make your life a lot easier when you're looking at, okay, status, where are we at? And a lot less labor intensive to get to these particular displays of that information. So you can see from what we've went through, TAPS is a very easy tool to use. So as I said before, it doesn't have to be somebody who really has any type of a background with scheduling. So on that point, I thank you all for joining us. I will turn it back over to Ian.
All right. Thank you, Mary Lynn. Just looking for my slides here. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits of TAPS. Um, so the biggest one is we save time. You can save about 75% of the time you would spend manually updating P6. And these are some quotes from some of our customers. Being able to wake up at 5 a.m. instead of 4 a.m. made a big difference after 21 days of the turnaround. Or TAP saved us 600 grueling scheduler hours. And it just allows people more time to do a better job. Um, it also allows more accuracy. What's interesting is we talked about TAPS Mobile and how you can push things out to the field. Um, and one of the things about TAPS is you don't necessarily need to take the foreman to do the updates. You're not going to take your most expensive resource and then have him or her doing updates in the field. You're going to have a coordinator or a junior engineer. But some of our clients even have time entry people when they're using the barcode version of TAPS. So instead of having the schedulers do the updates, they just get the cheapest resources that they have who are used to doing data entry, which are time entry clerks, and get them to do the inputs. So, it's always going to be accurate because basically TAPS is locking you into the right activities. You're not going to accidentally enter the wrong data on the wrong activity and cause a problem. TAPS helps with visibility. It helps get your earned value numbers um, into into P6. Now, I was thinking while Mary Lynn was showing that, I often get people asking, well, we just use the set actual units when duration percent complete changes in P6, and that calculates the earned value and puts on the actual units. Well, that's great until you want to actually do the third part of earned value, which is your comparison of earned versus actual, because you've now stolen the actual field and you're using it for earned value. So now you're missing a leg of the earned value analysis. With TAPS, you can use the earned value functionality and you can still enter actual units from whatever your time collection system happens to be. Um, it helps get better schedules out to the field. There's nothing worse than when, a foreman or a coordinator or whoever it happens to be puts progress into their sheet. They send it into the office, and the next day the same activity is still on their worksheet. It gets them very aggravated. So again, we make sure that things get picked up, and it allows us to do better crew forecasting because we know what's done and what isn't done. It helps us identify out of sequence activities. Um, So a lot of advantages when you're using tabs. And now, obviously, we like to let our customers talk about the tool. Um, so over the years, we've had some great quotes from some of our clients. The funniest one I thought was very old time scheduler down at the Husky Refinery in Lima, Ohio, who said, "I'm now faster than the checkout clerk at Walmart with this barcode scanner." Um, but more seriously, we get people who said, it's paid for itself many times over, and they're extremely happy with the solution because it basically just adds a lot of value. So a few of our clients, we have clients all over the world using this tool. Just a couple here. What's interesting is Shell has made this a corporate standard tool. It's available to their plants worldwide. Suncor Energy uses it in all their facilities. Many clients who use this tool. A little bit about some of these clients. Suncor is a large integrated Canadian energy company. They've got facilities all over Canada. They use taps at all their refineries. Um, they find that updating is about 3 times faster than it used to be. Um, and they've gone 2 different ways, interestingly enough. In some of the plants, they're moving to field-based reporting, which means taps mobile, but in a lot of the plants, they're still using data entry clerks to do the updating because they're still using the paper-based systems. One of their plants, they actually sold to Hawley Frontier, so their Mississauga lubes facility was sold, and the users at Mississauga introduced taps to Hawley Frontier, is now a client of ours that uses the tool across their organization as well. Nova Chemicals is a producer of plastics, and um, they have plants again all over North America. Um, when we started working with them, they were bringing their entire scheduling crew in very early in the morning to do updates. They now do it with taps, and it's much faster and much more accurate. What they found was they could bring in a much smaller crew first thing in the morning to get the updates done. So at this point, we'll open it up to questions. If you'd like to put any questions in, you can put them in the questions section of the application, um, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions yet, so we'll keep it open for a couple more minutes. If you do think of something you would like to ask us, or if a question comes to you about taps that we maybe haven't answered and you um, didn't think to ask in the session, here's our contact information. Mary Lynn's information is here. Please feel free to reach out to her, and we can answer any questions that you might have. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're always available and always happy to answer questions about our tools, whether it be TAPS or P6 Reporter or P6 QA or any of those kind of tools. Feel free to reach out to us. And with that, we'll end the session this morning. Thanks again.